Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood in the center of the Grand Council chamber. Above her, thousands of alien representatives sat in circular rows that reached toward the domed ceiling. Their eyes watched her with expressions ranging from boredom to open contempt. She had given the same speech 3 times before. Each time they laughed. "Honored council members," Elena began, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. "Humanity has served the Galactic Council faithfully for 47 years. We have worked your mines, protected your trade routes, and died defending your colonies. We ask again for equal representation and full citizenship rights for all human worlds." A sound like clicking laughter rippled through the chamber. High Chancellor Vexrath, a tall creature with silver skin and 4 arms, leaned forward on his elevated throne. His face held something that looked like a smile, but crueler. "Ambassador Vasquez," he said, his translator making his voice sound smooth and polite. "Your species has indeed been useful, like strong animals are useful. But you must understand your place. You come from a death world, a savage planet that breeds savage creatures. We cannot allow such beings to have power in civilized space." Elena felt her hands clench into fists. She forced them to relax. "We are not savages, Chancellor. We are people. You deserve what we choose to give you," Vexrath interrupted. "This council has spoken. Request denied. Again." More laughter echoed through the chamber. Elena looked up at the thousands of aliens, seeing the same dismissive expressions she had seen for years. They would never see humans as equals. They would never stop seeing Earth as a nightmare world that somehow produced intelligent life. She turned and walked out of the chamber, her jaw tight with frustration. 3 days later, everything changed. Admiral Marcus Chen sat in the command chair of the UHNS Valiant, watching the distress signal on his screen. His dark eyes were fixed on the blinking red dot that represented the colony ship Meridian Hope. 10,000 civilians, families, children, under attack by pirates in council-controlled space. "How long until we reach them?" Marcus asked. 2 hours at maximum burn, sir," his navigation officer replied. "And the council's nearest patrol?" 16 hours away, Admiral. They've acknowledged the distress call but ordered us to maintain position." Marcus felt ice in his veins. "Ordered us to stand down? There are 10,000 people dying out there." "Yes, sir. Direct order from Council Command. They say we're not authorized to operate in this sector." For a long moment, Marcus stared at the screen. He thought about his daughter, who would be about the same age as some of those children on the Meridian Hope. He thought about the oath he took to protect human lives. Then he thought about the consequences of disobeying a direct order from the Galactic Council. His hand moved toward the comm panel. Then it stopped. "Maintain position," he said quietly. The words tasted like poison. For 14 hours, Marcus and his crew watched the signals from the Meridian Hope grow weaker. They listened to the desperate messages, the screams, the final silence. When the Council patrol finally arrived, they found 8,642 bodies floating in space. The pirates were long gone. The Council issued a statement expressing their regrets and promising an investigation. They mentioned that human ships had been nearby but properly followed protocols by not entering restricted space. That night, Marcus sat alone in his quarters, staring at the list of names. So many children. He had been 2 hours away. 2 hours, and he had done nothing. His comm panel beeped. A message from Earth. High priority. Eyes only. Marcus opened it. There was no long explanation. No political speech. Just one word in white text on a black screen. Sovereign. He understood immediately. Earth had made its decision. They were done begging for respect. Done following rules that got their people killed. Done being treated as lesser beings. Marcus stood and walked to his window, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Galactic Council sat in their safe worlds, convinced of their superiority. They thought humans were useful animals. Dangerous but controllable. They were about to learn they were wrong. Within hours, every human ship in the galaxy received the same message. Diplomats packed their belongings. Trade vessels changed course. Military ships began moving into formation. The recall was total and absolute. Elena watched from her apartment window as human shuttles rose from the Council's capital world. She had spent 15 years here, trying to build bridges between humanity and the galaxy, trying to earn respect through patience and diplomacy, all for nothing. Her assistant, a young man named David, entered the room. "Ambassador, our shuttle leaves in 30 minutes. Are you ready?" "I don't know if I'll ever be ready for what comes next," Elena said softly. "Do you think they'll really do it? Go to war?" Elena thought about the Meridian Hope, about the thousands of humans who had died over the years while the Council looked the other way. About every insult, every dismissal, every time they were called animals or savages. "Yes," she said. "I think we're past the point of no return." Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of his ship as the entire Terran defense fleet assembled near Jupiter. 31 warships, each one built in Earth's orbital shipyards. They looked different from Council vessels. Smaller, meaner, designed by people who understood war. "All ships reporting ready, Admiral," his first officer announced. Marcus nodded. He opened a channel to all human vessels and to every communication relay in the galaxy. What he said next would be heard across hundreds of star systems. "This is Admiral Marcus Chen of Earth's Sovereign Fleet. For 47 years, humanity has served the Galactic Council. We have followed their laws, respected their authority, and died for their interests. We asked only for basic dignity and equal rights. We were denied. 3 days ago, 10,000 human civilians were murdered while Council forces ordered us not to help them. This Council has shown us that we will never be more than slaves in their eyes. Therefore, humanity formally withdraws from the Galactic Council. We claim our right to exist as free and equal beings. We demand a formal apology, reparations for our dead, and recognition of our sovereignty. You have 72 hours to respond." He paused, looking at the faces of his crew, young and old. Different colors, different backgrounds, but all human, all ready to fight for their future. "And if they refuse?" someone asked. Marcus turned back to the view screen where distant stars glittered against the black. "Then they'll learn what it really means to anger a species from a death world." Message ends. The broadcast spread across the galaxy at the speed of light. On 1,000 worlds, aliens watched with shock or anger or fear. On Earth, billions of humans watched with something that felt like hope mixed with terror. They didn't know if they could win a war against the entire galaxy. But they knew they were done being victims. High Chancellor Vexrath received the message in his private chambers. He watched it twice, his 4 hands tapping against his desk in irritation. Then he smiled. Humans were finally showing their true nature. Violent, aggressive, exactly what he always said they were. He opened a channel to the Council's military command. "Assemble an enforcement fleet. 47 ships should be sufficient. These animals need to be reminded of their place. If they resist, destroy them. It's time the galaxy saw what happens to Deathworlders who forget their inferior." As the Council fleet began to mobilize, neither side knew that they were about to start a war that would change the galaxy forever. The Council's enforcement fleet arrived at the edge of the Sol system exactly 72 hours after Admiral Chen's message. 47 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Pluto's orbit, their hulls gleaming with the proud insignias of a dozen different species. Commander Zelnoth, a veteran Zelthari officer, sat in his command chair with complete confidence. This would be over quickly. "Open a channel to the human ships," he ordered. On his view screen, Admiral Chen's face appeared. Zelnoth noticed the human looked tired. Good. They were already afraid. "Human Admiral," Zelnoth began, using the tone one might use with a misbehaving child. "The Council has rejected your demands. You will stand down your military forces, return to Council space, and submit to proper authority. If you comply within the next hour, we will show mercy. If you resist, we will crush you. Those are your only options." Marcus Chen stared back at him with those strange, forward-facing eyes. Predator eyes, Zelnoth thought with disgust. The human was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke. "Commander, did you know that Earth has spent 3.5 billion years trying to kill everything that lives on it? Volcanoes, earthquakes, hurricanes, ice ages, meteor strikes, animals that evolved specifically to hunt other animals, diseases that jump between species. Our world has thrown everything at us and we survived it all. We didn't survive by running away. We survived by fighting back, by refusing to give up, by becoming the most stubborn, dangerous species our planet could create." Zelnoth felt his neck plates rise in irritation. "Is there a point to this history lesson?" "The point," Marcus said softly, "is that you sent 47 ships to intimidate a species that evolved fighting for every single day of existence. You made a mistake, Commander, and now you're going to pay for it." The channel closed. Zelnoth laughed. "All ships, battle formation." Let's teach these animals a lesson they won't forget. The Council fleet moved forward in the standard attack pattern, a beautiful display of coordinated movement perfected over centuries. They had numbers, superior firepower, and generations of military tradition. This would be easy. Then the human ships moved, and everything Xel'Nath thought he knew about space combat changed. The Terran vessels didn't form neat lines or follow any pattern the Council recognized. They scattered like a school of fish, each ship moving independently at speeds that should have turned their crews into paste from the G-forces. Xel'Nath's tactical officer was shouting something about acceleration rates that exceeded safety limits by factors of 3 or 4. Impossible, Xel'Nath muttered. Living beings can't survive those forces, but they could. Because they came from a world with higher gravity. Because their bodies were designed to withstand punishment that would kill most species. Because evolution had built them to endure. The first human ship, a destroyer called the Indomitable, dove straight through the Council formation. Xel'Nath ordered his ships to fire. Energy beams lanced out, the standard particle weapons that had dominated galactic warfare for 1,000 years. They hit the Indomitable's shields and armor. The human ship kept coming. Shields are absorbing the damage, his tactical officer reported in confusion. Their armor composition is... I don't understand these readings. It's not standard materials. Because it's not meant for your weapons, Marcus Chen's voice came over the open channel. Our armor is designed to survive re-entry through Earth's atmosphere, to withstand meteor impacts, to take punishment that would vaporize your ships. You built your vessels for civilized warfare. We built ours to survive hell. The Indomitable fired back, not with energy beams but with solid metal slugs, accelerated to a fraction of light. Speed. Railguns. Kinetic weapons that the Council had, abandoned centuries ago as too primitive. The slugs tore through Council shields like they didn't exist. Physics didn't care about force fields. A chunk of metal moving at 50 kilometers per second carried more destructive force than any energy weapon. And it couldn't be deflected by the magnetic fields that protected against particle beams. 3 Council ships died in the first 30 seconds. Xel'Nath watched in horror as his beautiful formation collapsed into chaos. Human ships were everywhere, moving in ways that shouldn't be possible, firing weapons that bypassed every defense system the Council possessed. They fought like they had gone insane, taking risks no sane commander would allow. But they weren't insane. They were just willing to push limits that other species couldn't survive. Captain Sarah Okonkwo piloted the Indomitable through a hail of weapons fire, her heart pounding but her hands steady. Her co-pilot, Lieutenant Hayes, was calling out targets and threats, his voice quick and efficient. This was what they had trained for. This was what humans did best. They adapted. They survived. They won. Captain, we've taken damage to the port side, Hayes reported. Hull breach in sections 7 through 9. Repair teams are responding. Keep us moving, Sarah ordered. If we stop, we die. She saw a Council dreadnought ahead, easily twice the size of her ship. Its weapons were swiveling toward her. A normal commander would have pulled away, seeking safety. Sarah pushed the throttle forward and aimed straight for it. Captain, Hayes asked nervously. Trust me, Sarah said. The Indomitable accelerated directly at the dreadnought. Council ships could move fast in straight lines, but they couldn't maneuver quickly. They were built for long-range battles where ships exchanged fire from safe distances. The dreadnought tried to bring its weapons to bear, but Sarah was too close, moving too fast. She waited until the last possible second, then fired everything she had directly into the dreadnought's command section. Railgun rounds, missiles, even their point defense lasers. The massive ship's shields flickered and failed under the concentrated assault. Its bridge exploded in a ball of fire. Then Sarah pulled the Indomitable into a turn that made her vision go dark at the edges from the G-forces. She heard Hayes grunt in pain beside her. But they survived the turn, and the dreadnought was crippled behind them. All across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Human ships took damage, but they kept fighting. They rammed enemy vessels when they ran out of ammunition. They used the cover of debris fields and radiation zones that Council sensors couldn't penetrate. They fought dirty, fought smart, and fought without mercy. Commander Xel'Nath tried to regroup his forces, but it was like herding frightened animals. His ships were designed for organized battles between civilized forces. Not this chaos, not this savagery. All ships retreat to Rally Point Delta. he ordered, his voice shaking. "We need to reform," and a human missile struck his ship's engines. The blast threw Zelnoth from his chair. Alarms screamed throughout the bridge. They were dead in space. Through his cracked view screen, he watched the human fleet regroup with impossible speed. They had lost ships too. He could see the burning wrecks drifting through space. But they had won. Somehow, against superior numbers, they had won. 4 hours after the battle began, it was over. 44 Council ships were destroyed or crippled. 3 managed to escape back to Council space. The human fleet had lost 9 vessels and taken heavy damage to most of the others. But they held the battlefield. Admiral Chen's face appeared on every working view screen in the system. He looked exhausted, sad even, but determined. To the Galactic Council, he said, "You sent a fleet to crush us, to remind us of our place. Instead, you learned something important. You learned that Deathworlders don't surrender. We don't break. We don't know how. You can send more ships if you want. Send 100. Send 1,000. It won't change anything. We're not your slaves anymore. We're not your animals. We're free beings, and we'll fight for our freedom until our last breath." He paused, his eyes hard as steel. "You called us Deathworlders like it was an insult. Like we should be ashamed of where we come from. But we're not ashamed. We're proud. Earth made us strong. It made us survivors. And now you'll learn what that really means." The message spread across the galaxy within hours. Reactions varied wildly. Some species cheered, seeing hope that the Council could be challenged. Others trembled in fear, wondering what these violent humans might do next. And some, like High Chancellor Vexarath, felt only rage. He stood in his private chambers watching the footage of the battle for the 3rd time. His hands trembled with anger. How dare these primitives defeat a Council fleet? How dare they humiliate the greatest civilization in the galaxy? "Summon the War Council," he ordered his aide. "Mobilize the Purification Armada. Every ship. Every weapon. I don't care what it costs. These humans will be destroyed, and the galaxy will remember what happens to Deathworlders who forget their place." His aide hesitated. "High Chancellor, the Purification Armada has not been deployed in 300 years. Surely there are other options?" "Do it," Vexrath snarled, "and prepare the Worldbreaker platforms. If these animals want war, we'll give them war, and when we're done, Earth will be nothing but dust and memories." On Earth, billions watched the footage of the battle. They saw their ships fight impossible odds. They saw humans die defending their freedom. And they knew this was just the beginning. The Council would come back with more forces. They would come with fury and vengeance, but humans had faced extinction before. They had survived ice ages and plagues and every disaster their world could throw at them. They would survive this too. They had to, because the Purification Armada gathered at the edge of Council space like a dark storm. 300 warships from 12 different species, all united under one purpose: to crush humanity's rebellion. Warmaster Krelnak of the Krithian Empire commanded the fleet, a battle-hardened soldier who had fought in 17 campaigns. He looked at the assembled forces with satisfaction. This was not a police action or a warning. This was total war. "All ships report ready, Warmaster," his second-in-command announced. "Good," Krelnak rumbled. His species was large and heavily armored, evolved from herbivores who had learned to work together against predators. "We jumped to Sol system in 1 hour. Remember your orders. Disable their military forces. Occupy their homeworld. Show mercy to those who surrender, but no mercy to those who resist." The fleet jumped, tearing holes in reality to cross the distance to Earth in an instant. They emerged in the Sol system expecting a fierce battle, expecting the human fleet to defend their home desperately. Instead, they found almost nothing. "Sensor sweep," Krelnak ordered. Multiple civilian stations detected near Earth's moon and around Jupiter. Energy signatures suggest several million humans in those locations. But military vessels, the sensor officer paused. "Only 3 ships in orbit around Earth. The rest of their fleet is gone." Krelnak felt his battle plates shift uneasily. Where were the humans? They wouldn't abandon their homeworld, would they? "Warmaster, we're receiving a transmission from Earth." Admiral Chen's face appeared on the screen. He stood on the bridge of a ship that looked different from before. Newer, bigger. Behind him, Krelnak could see a crew working with quiet efficiency. "Warmaster Krelnak," Chen said. "Welcome to Sol system. As you can see, we're not here to meet you. That's because we learned something important from your last attack. You can't win a war by defending. You win by making the enemy afraid to attack in the first place. What are you talking about, human? Krelnak demanded. Chen smiled, but it wasn't a happy expression. It was the smile of someone who had made a terrible decision and committed to it fully. We're talking about the fact that while you were gathering your fleet, our ships were spreading out across Council space. Right now, human strike forces are in position near 15 of your most important worlds, not your military bases, your civilian infrastructure, your trade hubs, your government centers. Krelnak felt ice in his stomach. You wouldn't dare. You brought 300 warships to destroy our home, Chen replied. What exactly did you think we wouldn't dare? You wanted to teach us a lesson about our place in the galaxy. Instead, you're about to learn what happens when you corner a predator. When you threaten everything a human loves, we don't just fight back. We make sure you can never threaten us again. The transmission ended. Krelnak immediately opened channels to Council Command. Chaos greeted him. Reports were flooding in from across Council space. Human ships were attacking trade stations, destroying military supply depots, hitting communications relays. They weren't targeting civilians, but they were systematically dismantling the infrastructure that held the Council together. And then came the worst news. A human fleet had appeared near Zelthar Prime, the Council's capital world. The seat of galactic government, the most heavily defended planet in known space. Warmaster, we're receiving new orders, his communications officer said. We're to return immediately to defend the capital. Krelnak looked at Earth, hanging peacefully in space ahead of them. They had brought enough firepower to break the planet apart, but if they did, humanity would respond by destroying Council worlds in revenge. It would mean genocide on both sides. Total war. All ships prepare to jump back to Zelthar Prime, he ordered reluctantly. The Purification Armada vanished as quickly as it had arrived, racing to defend their own home. At Jupiter, Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the UHNS Retribution, watching the Council fleet retreat. Around him, his command crew let out sighs of relief. The gambit had worked. They had convinced the Council that Earth's fleet was scattered across the galaxy, forcing them to pull back to defend their own territory. In truth, most of the human fleet was right here, hidden in Jupiter's massive magnetic field and radiation belts. The radiation was intense enough to blind Council sensors, and human ships were designed to operate in environments that would kill most species. They had been waiting for days in conditions that turned Jupiter's orbit into a death trap for anyone else. All ships begin moving into position, Chen ordered. When they figure out we tricked them, they'll be back. And this time we need to hit them hard enough that they'll think twice about coming back a third time. Lieutenant James Rodriguez sat in the cockpit of his fighter, one of 300 small attack craft hidden among Jupiter's moons. He was 23 years old, fresh from the academy, and absolutely terrified. The waiting had been the worst part. Sitting in the radiation zone for days, wondering if his ship's shielding would hold, wondering if he would live through the coming battle. All fighters, this is Flight Command, a voice came over his comm. Enemy fleet has returned. They're bringing everything this time. Nearly 500 ships now that they picked up reinforcements. Form up on your squadron leaders and prepare for launch. James felt his hands shake. 500 ships. Against what? Maybe 70 human vessels and 300 fighters? The math was wrong. They were going to die, but they were going to fight anyway. Because Earth was behind them. Because surrender meant slavery. Because that's what humans did. They fought impossible odds and somehow survived. Red Squadron, launch. The order came. James pushed his fighter forward, joining the stream of small craft emerging from Jupiter's shadow. Ahead, the Council fleet was deploying in a massive formation, ready to sweep through the system and destroy everything they found. The human fleet struck from 3 directions at once. Capital ships emerged from Jupiter's radiation belts. Fighters swarmed in from the outer moons, and missiles launched from hidden platforms scattered throughout the system. Weapons that had been pre-positioned and waiting in silence. The battle was chaos from the first second. James followed his squadron leader through a hail of defensive fire. Their target was a Council carrier that was launching its own fighters. His head rattled with voices shouting warnings, calling out targets, screaming for help. He lost track of his wingman somewhere in the confusion. A Council fighter appeared in front of him. James reacted on instinct, training taking over from fear. He fired. The enemy exploded. He didn't have time to think about it before 3 more appeared. Red 7, you've got 2 on your tail. Someone shouted that was his call sign. James threw his fighter into a turn that made his vision tunnel. The pursuing ships followed, but they couldn't match his maneuverability. Human fighters were smaller and faster, built for atmospheric combat on a world where air pressure could crush most species. In space, they were like angry insects, impossible to swat. He looped back and got behind one of his pursuers. Fired. The ship's shields collapsed under the assault of his mass driver. He was about to fire again when a massive explosion lit up the battlefield ahead. Captain Sarah Okonkwo's ship, the Indomitable, had taken catastrophic damage. James watched in horror as the destroyer, trailing atmosphere and debris, aimed itself at a Council battlecruiser. She wasn't trying to escape. She was accelerating toward the enemy ship. "All ships, this is Okonkwo." Her voice came over the general channel. "It's been an honor. Take care of Earth for us." The Indomitable, a ship that carried 300 crew members, rammed the Council battlecruiser at full speed. The explosion was visible across half the system. Both ships vanished in a ball of nuclear fire. James felt tears on his face, but he didn't have time to mourn. More enemies were coming. He kept fighting. The battle raged for 6 hours. Human ships took terrible casualties, but they gave worse than they got. They used nuclear weapons, something the Council considered too dangerous and unpredictable. They deployed autonomous drones that hunted enemy ships without mercy. They used electromagnetic pulse weapons that overloaded the neural interfaces most alien species used to connect with their ships. And they fought in the radiation zone around Jupiter, a place where most species suffered from sensor blindness and system malfunctions. For humans, it was just another hostile environment to survive. When the Council fleet finally broke and retreated, they left behind more than 200 destroyed warships. The human fleet had lost 39 ships and countless fighters. The cost was terrible. The victory was real. Admiral Chen stood on his damaged bridge looking at the casualty reports. Nearly 20,000 dead. Captain Okonkwo and her entire crew, Lieutenant Rodriguez and 400 other fighter pilots. Thousands more wounded. And this was just one battle. "Sir, we're getting reports from our strike teams across Council space," his first officer said quietly. "Operation Ragnarok is proceeding as planned, but, Admiral, we've lost 5 more ships in those operations. And now we're getting intelligence that the Council is mobilizing world-breaker weapons. Planet killers. They're planning to destroy Earth even if it costs them everything." Marcus looked out at the stars, at the wreckage floating in space, at Jupiter's massive form hanging in the distance. The intelligence came through coded channels, delivered by a sympathetic alien who risked everything to warn humanity. The Council was building world-breaker platforms in orbit around 3 different star systems. Ancient weapons, banned by treaty, for 500 years now being assembled in secret. Each platform could crack a planet's crust, turning a living world into a dead rock. Earth had 96 hours before the platforms reached firing position. Admiral Marcus Chen gathered his command staff in the war room of the Retribution. Holographic displays showed the locations of the worldbreaker platforms, the Council's military deployments, and the scattered human forces across the galaxy. The math was brutal. They didn't have enough ships to destroy the platforms and defend Earth. "We need to end this war," Marcus said quietly. "Not just win a battle. End it completely. If we let the Council regroup, they'll keep coming. They'll keep building weapons to destroy us. We need to take away their ability to make war." "You're talking about attacking Zelthar Prime," his first officer said, "the most defended planet in the galaxy." "I'm talking about cutting off the head of the snake," Marcus replied. "The Council leadership is on that planet, their central command, their political power. If we capture or destroy it, the Council collapses. Their member species will be too busy arguing about succession to coordinate attacks against us." "Sir, we'd need every ship we have," another officer protested. "That leaves Earth undefended." Marcus looked at the display showing his homeworld, blue and green and beautiful, billions of people depending on him to make the right choice. Earth has planetary defenses, shield generators, ground-based weapons. If the Council sends ships there while we're gone, our people will have to hold. But if we don't do this, those world-breaker platforms will fire in 4 days. Then none of it matters. The room was silent. Finally, his first officer nodded. Operation Ragnarok. All or nothing. All or nothing, Marcus agreed. 20 hours later, the human fleet jumped into the Zelthar system. 62 warships, thousands of fighters, and every marine they could spare. They emerged from faster than light. Travel already moving at combat speed, already firing. The defense fleet around Zelthar Prime numbered over 200 ships. But they weren't expecting an attack on their capital. They weren't expecting humans to be crazy enough to strike at the heart of Council power while their own planet was under threat. Marcus watched the tactical display as the battle unfolded. Human ships drove through the Council lines like spears, targeting specific vessels and ignoring the rest. They weren't trying to win a traditional battle, they were trying to create a corridor to the planet. "Breaching ships, prepare for launch," he ordered. 8 specialized vessels built for exactly this mission broke away from the main fleet. They were armored like tanks and shaped like bullets, designed for one purpose: orbital insertion through hostile fire. Each carried 500 Marines in powered armor. The Zelthari defense forces tried to stop them. Energy weapons hammered the breaching ships. Missiles streaked toward them. But human engineers had studied every recording of Council weapons for 47 years. They knew how to build armor that could survive. 6 of the 8 breaching ships made it through. They hit the atmosphere at speeds that turned their hulls red hot. The G-forces inside would have killed most species. Human Marines, strapped into crash harnesses and wearing armor designed to handle Earth's punishing gravity, gritted their teeth and endured. Sergeant Maria Santos felt every second of the descent. The ship shook like it was being torn apart. Her armor's medical systems injected her with drugs to keep her conscious under the crushing deceleration. Around her, 49 other Marines prepared for combat. 60 seconds to impact. The pilot's voice crackled over the comm. Maria checked her weapon for the 3rd time, a rifle that fired explosive rounds heavy enough to punch through most materials. In Earth's gravity, the weapon would be almost impossible to carry. Here on Zelthar Prime with its 0.7 G, she felt almost superhuman. The breaching ship crashed through the roof of the Council's government complex and came to a violent stop inside the Grand Chamber itself. The rear hatch blew open with explosive charges. Maria was first out, her rifle up, scanning for threats. The Council members were still there, hundreds of them, frozen in shock. They had been in the middle of an emergency session when the ceiling exploded. Now they stared at the armored humans pouring into their sacred hall. "Nobody move!" Maria shouted through her armor's external speakers. "This building is now under the control of Earth's military forces. Resist, and you will be considered hostile combatants." For a moment, nothing happened. Then High Chancellor Vexrath stood from his throne, his forearms spread wide. "You dare?" he hissed. "You dare violate this chamber? You will be executed for this, all of you. Your entire species will be—" "Will be what?" Maria interrupted. "Destroyed? You already tried that. You sent 500 ships to destroy Earth and we beat you. You built world-breaker platforms and we're here anyway. You don't get to make threats anymore, Chancellor. You lost." More Marines poured into the chamber from other breaching ships that had landed throughout the government complex. The sound of weapons fire echoed from other parts of the building as security forces tried to resist and were quickly overwhelmed. In orbit, Admiral Chen watched the tactical feed. The Council's defense fleet was in chaos. Some ships were trying to break through to protect their government. Others were pulling back, unwilling to fire on their own capital. The human fleet exploited the confusion, destroying orbital defense platforms and securing position over the city. "Ground team reports the Council chambers are secure," his communications officer announced. "They have captured High Chancellor Vexrath and 43 other senior officials." Marcus allowed himself a small breath of relief. Phase 1 was complete. Now came the harder part. "Broadcast on all channels," he ordered. "Time for the galaxy to learn the truth." The message went out across every communication network in Council space. Admiral Chen's face appeared on billions of screens across hundreds of worlds. "People of the galaxy," he began. "For the past month, your leaders have told you that humanity is dangerous, that we are savages who must be controlled or destroyed. They have painted us as monsters. But I want to show you something. The screen. switched to recordings pulled from the Council's own secure archives. Files that had been classified for centuries. Marcus had found them in the government database during the assault. The recordings showed first contact with other species from Deathworlds, beings that had evolved on harsh planets, who showed signs of being too aggressive, too dangerous. The recordings showed what the Council did to them, how they were quietly exterminated, whole civilizations erased because they made the Council afraid. 17 species, Marcus said, as the images played. 17 civilizations that might have contributed to the galaxy, all destroyed by the Council you trusted to keep you safe. And we were supposed to be number 18. The reaction across the galaxy was immediate and explosive. On dozens of worlds, protests erupted. Member species demanded answers. Some of the Council's own military commanders refused to follow further orders. In the Council chambers on Zelthar Prime, Vexrath watched the broadcast on a screen, his face twisted with rage. "You have destroyed nothing," he said to the Marines guarding him. "You have only proven that you are exactly what I said you were. Dangerous, violent, uncontrollable. The galaxy will see this and they will fear you. They will demand your destruction." Maria Santos looked at the former High Chancellor. "Maybe. Or maybe they'll remember that we had the power to destroy your capital, and we didn't. We could have dropped kinetic strikes from orbit and turned this city into a crater. We could have killed every council member, but we didn't. We captured you instead. We followed the rules of war even when you broke them. Because we're not the monsters you made us out to be." Vexrath had no answer to that. Over the next 72 hours, the galaxy transformed. 23 species formally withdrew from the Council, declaring their independence. Others demanded immediate reform. The Council's military structure collapsed as different species fleets pulled back to defend their own interests. The Worldbreaker platforms were seized by neutral forces before they could be activated. Admiral Chen's fleet, joined now by ships from other species who had grown tired of Council tyranny, secured the Zelthar system. But the cost had been terrible. 54,000 humans were dead, entire ships and their crews lost, fighter squadrons that no longer existed, Marines who would never come home. Marcus stood in the Grand Chamber, now converted into a military command post, looking at the names scrolling across a display. So many dead. So many families destroyed. And for what? For the right to be treated as equals. For the freedom to exist without someone's boot on their neck. Ambassador Elena Vasquez arrived 3 days after the battle. She looked around the occupied council chambers with mixed emotions. This was where she had spent years trying to negotiate peace. Now it was a conquered building. "You did it," she said to Marcus. "You won the war." "I didn't want to win a war," Marcus replied quietly. "I wanted respect, dignity, peace. Instead, I got thousands of my people killed and turned humanity into the thing we were trying to prove we weren't. Conquerors. No. Elena say the Yalaran orbital habitat floated in neutral space. A massive ring of metal and glass that had served as a meeting place for diplomats for 300 years. Now it hosted the most important negotiations in galactic history. Representatives from 68 species gathered in the Great Hall arguing, debating, and trying to build something new from the ashes of the old order. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the human delegations table, looking out at the assembled beings. Some watched her with curiosity, others with fear, a few with open hostility. She understood all of those reactions. Humanity had broken the galaxy's most powerful government through violence. Now they had to prove they wanted peace. "The Deathworld Accord," she began, her voice carrying through the hall's audio systems, "is not about human dominance. It's about equality. For too long the Council decided which species deserved rights and which deserved slavery, which deserved protection and which deserved extermination. That system is dead. We're here to build something better." A Zelthari representative stood, his silver skin catching the light. "Better? You invaded our capital. You hold our leaders prisoner. You call this peace?" "I call it justice," Elena replied calmly. "Your leaders ordered the construction of planet-killer weapons aimed at Earth. They systematically destroyed 17 other civilizations. They created a system where might made right, and then complained when someone proved mightier. You want to talk about invasion? Let's talk about the 47 years humanity spent under Council occupation. Let's talk about the 8,742 civilians who died because your ship stood by and watched. The Zilthari sat down, but his expression remained hostile. Another representative stood.
Kelvara of the Yalaran, a species known for their neutrality and wisdom.
What guarantees can humans offer? How do we know you won't become what the Council was? Elena had expected this question. It was the core issue that would determine whether peace was possible. We propose a new galactic assembly with equal representation for all member species. No species gets special status. No species gets veto power. Decisions are made by majority vote, with protections for minority rights built into the charter. And military force? Kelvara pressed. Who controls weapons? Who enforces peace? A joint peacekeeping force, Elena said. Ships and personnel from multiple species serving together. No single species can dominate. And we propose complete transparency. All military deployments, all weapons development, all major decisions will be public record. No more secret programs, no more hidden agendas. The debate continued for hours, then days, then weeks. Every species had concerns. Every delegation had demands. But slowly, painfully, they found common ground. The trial of High Chancellor Vexrath took place in a specially constructed court on the Yalaran habitat. The judges came from 5 neutral species. The prosecutors included representatives from 3 civilizations that had been oppressed under Council rule. Vexrath's defense attorneys argued that he had been protecting the galaxy from dangerous species. The prosecution presented evidence, recordings of massacres, documents ordering the extermination of entire worlds, plans to build weapons of genocide. The list of crimes was so long that it took 3 days just to read the charges. Admiral Marcus Chen testified on the 4th day. He sat in the witness stand looking older than he had 6 months ago. The war had aged him. Did you order the attack on Zelthar Prime? The prosecutor asked. Yes, Marcus said simply. Why? Marcus looked at Vexrath sitting in the defendant's chair. Because the Council was building weapons to destroy Earth. Because they had already killed thousands of my people. Because they gave us no choice. We could fight or die. We chose to fight. Some would say your response was excessive, the defense attorney interjected. You could have negotiated. Instead, you invaded a capital world. We tried negotiating for 47 years, Marcus replied, his voice hard. It got us nowhere. You can't negotiate with someone who fundamentally believes you're an animal. You can't reason with someone who thinks genocide is an acceptable solution. Sometimes the only way to stop a bully is to hit back hard enough that they can't get up again. The defense attorney pressed forward. And now? Now that you've proven you can hit back, what's to stop you from becoming the next tyrant? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Pain, he said finally. Loss. The memory of every person who died under my command. I remember their names. All of them. Every captain who went down with their ship. Every Marine who didn't come home. Every fighter pilot who vanished in combat. I carry that weight, and I never want to carry more. He looked directly at the cameras broadcasting the trial across the galaxy. We didn't fight this war because we wanted power. We fought because we wanted to survive, to exist without fear, to raise our children in a galaxy that saw them as people, not monsters. Now that we've won, we just want peace, real peace. The kind where everyone has a voice and no one lives in fear. The verdict came 3 weeks later. Vexrath and his inner circle were found guilty of genocide, war crimes, and crimes against sapient life. The sentence, life imprisonment, not execution. Elena had argued for this. She said that killing them would make them martyrs. Letting them live to see the better galaxy they had tried to prevent would be a more fitting punishment. Not everyone agreed with mercy. Many wanted blood. But the court's decision stood. The Deathworld Accord was signed 4 months after the war ended. 68 species joined the new Galactic Assembly. 23 had been part of the old council but chose reform over resistance. 45 were newly independent or had never been part of any galactic government. The treaty included provisions that changed everything: equal representation for all species, ban on planet-killer weapons and weapons of mass destruction, joint peacekeeping forces with mandatory mixed crews, transparent military spending and deployment, protection for developing civilizations from exploitation, reparations for species harmed by the old council, and a special provision: recognition that species from harsh worlds deserved the same rights and respect as any other. The signing ceremony took place on Earth. It was the first time most alien species had visited a death world. Many were terrified. Their environmental suits beeped warnings about the gravity, the atmospheric pressure, the aggressive microorganisms, but they came anyway. Elena stood on the stage in Geneva, looking out at the assembled delegates. Behind them, through the building's massive windows, Earth's mountains rose toward the sky. Beautiful and deadly and home. Today we make a promise, she said, that no species will face extinction for being different, that no civilization will be destroyed for coming from a harsh world. That strength doesn't mean tyranny, and peace doesn't mean submission. Today we choose to be better than we were. She signed the document first, her hand steady. Then each delegate came forward, adding their mark to history. Admiral Marcus Chen watched from the back of the hall. He had refused a seat on the stage, saying he was a soldier, not a politician. But Elena had made sure he was there. He needed to see this, needed to know that the deaths hadn't been for nothing. After the ceremony, he walked through Geneva's streets. People recognized him and kept their distance, not sure if he wanted to be approached. He found a quiet park and sat on a bench, looking at the mountains in the distance. A young woman approached hesitantly. She wore a military uniform with the insignia of the new Joint Peacekeeping Force, human and alien badges side by side. Admiral Chen? She asked. Just Marcus now, he said. I retired 2 months ago. I'm Lieutenant Sarah Rodriguez. My brother was James, fighter pilot. He died at Jupiter. Marcus felt his chest tighten. He remembered the name. Red 7, 23 years old. I'm sorry, he said, the words feeling inadequate. I wanted to thank you, Sarah said. James used to send me messages. Right before the war, he was scared. He didn't think we could win. But he said if we didn't fight, his future kids would grow up as slaves. He said some things were worth dying for. She pulled out a photo showing a young man with a bright smile. James Rodriguez before the war. Before the fear and the fighting and the fire, he got his wish, Sarah continued. His sacrifice meant something. Kids today will grow up free. Human and alien living together, learning together. He died for that. You all did. And I wanted you to know, we're not going to waste it. My generation, we're going to build the galaxy he fought for. Marcus looked at her young face so much like her brother's and felt tears on his cheeks. Make it good, he said quietly. Make it worth what they paid. We will, she promised. 3 years after the war ended, the first joint military academy opened on Mars. Human and alien cadets trained together, learning each other's languages, cultures, and fighting styles. The facility was designed to accommodate species with different environmental needs. There were high-gravity areas for humans and low-gravity zones for species from gentler worlds. Instructor Chen taught military history and tactics. He had been surprised when they asked him, but Elena convinced him. Someone needs to teach them why we fought, she said, and how to make sure we never have to fight that way again. On his first day, an alien cadet asked the question he had been expired. The research vessel Endeavour floated quietly in the darkness of space, its crew of 3 running their usual scans of the mysterious nebula that stretched out before them, like a painted canvas of purple and blue gases. Dr. Sarah Chen sat at her workstation, studying the unusual radiation patterns, while Marcus Webb tinkered with a malfunctioning sensor array in the corner. Captain James Rodriguez sipped his coffee and watched the view screen with the calm expression of a man who had seen everything space could throw at him. None of them noticed the massive warship uncloaking behind them until it was too late. The ship that appeared was like something from a nightmare. It was black as the void itself, covered in sharp angles and protruding spikes that seemed designed purely to intimidate. Strange lights pulsed along its surface in patterns that hurt to look at directly. The vessel was easily 50 times larger than the Endeavour, and it moved with the deliberate slowness of a predator that knew its prey had nowhere to run. Commander Zixthal stood on the bridge of his warship, his 9-foot frame towering over his crew. His obsidian exoskeleton gleamed under the red lighting of the command center, and his 4 eyes focused on the small human ship with satisfaction. This would be easy. It was always easy. The Krathix Dominion had perfected the art of psychological warfare over centuries, and they had conquered 47 different species without firing more than a handful of shots. Fear was their weapon, and they wielded it like master craftsmen. The humans would surrender within minutes. They always did. Zixthal activated the communication channel and transmitted the standard intimidation package. The screens on the human ship would now be showing carefully designed images meant to trigger the deepest, primal fears in any intelligent species. Darkness, predators, death. The sounds that accompanied the images were tuned to specific frequencies that caused panic in most carbon-based life forms. On the Endeavor, Sarah looked up from her work as the main screen flickered. Strange images began flashing across it, accompanied by a deep thrumming sound that seemed to vibrate through the hull. She tilted her head, studying the display with professional interest. "Huh," she said. "Marcus, are you seeing this?" Marcus glanced over from his repair work. "Yeah, looks like some kind of psychological warfare technique. Pretty sophisticated, actually. The frequency modulation is really clever." Captain Rodriguez set down his coffee mug and studied the screen. "Well, I suppose we should respond to whoever's doing this." He pressed the communication button. "This is Captain James Rodriguez of the Earth research vessel Endeavor. Can we help you with something?" On the Krathix warship, Zixthal's antennae twitched in confusion. The humans should be cowering by now. They should be flooding communication channels with pleas for mercy. Instead, one of them sounded almost bored. He decided to escalate. Zixthal gestured to his crew, and they initiated the boarding protocol. A docking tunnel extended from the warship to the Endeavor, and a dozen Krathix warriors marched through it. Each warrior was a terrifying sight, their exoskeletons modified with sharp protrusions, their bioluminescent organs pulsing with threatening colors. They had practiced their entrance routine countless times. It never failed to break the will of their enemies. The airlock of the Endeavor hissed open, and the Krathix warriors flooded in. They spread out in their standard intimidation formation, filling the small cargo bay with their massive forms. Their leader, a warrior named Kresh, activated his threat display. Holographic images of dying worlds and burning cities filled the air around him. Chemical scent markers flooded the room, designed to trigger fear responses in any mammalian species. The three humans stood in the cargo bay, looking at the display of alien warriors. Sarah's eyes went wide, but not with fear. She pulled out a small tablet and started taking notes. "Fascinating," she muttered. "The holographic technology is seamless. And those bioluminescent patterns, I wonder if they're under conscious control or automatic responses." Marcus stepped closer to one of the warriors, much to the alien's surprise. "Excuse me, but is that exoskeleton biological or mechanical? The joints look articulated, but I can't tell if they're natural or enhanced." Kresh stared at the small human who had just walked up to him without any apparent fear. This had never happened before. Ever. In over 100 boarding actions, not a single species had approached them voluntarily. Captain Rodriguez cleared his throat. "Gentlemen, or whatever the appropriate term is, welcome aboard the Endeavor. I apologize for the cramped conditions. We're just a research vessel, not really set up for guests. Can I offer you some coffee? We also have tea, though I'll warn you it might not be compatible with your biology." Zixthal, watching through his warrior's body cameras, felt something he had not experienced in many years. Uncertainty. The humans were not reacting correctly. They showed curiosity instead of terror. They offered hospitality instead of surrender. Something was very wrong. He opened a direct communication channel to the human ship. His voice, translated by the universal language matrix, boomed through the cargo bay. "I am Commander Zixthal of the Krathix Dominion. You have entered space claimed by our empire. You will surrender your vessel immediately or face destruction." Rodriguez nodded politely. My apologies, Commander. We weren't aware this space was claimed. Our star charts showed it as unexplored. We're just doing some research on the nebula. Scientific mission, nothing military or commercial. Happy to share our findings if you're interested." "You do not understand your situation, human," Zixthal replied, his voice dropping to what the Krathix considered a terrifying register. "We are the Krathix. We are the nightmare that lesser species fear. We are death itself walking among you." Sarah looked up from her tablet. "Oh, you're nocturnal predators? That would explain the low-light vision adaptations I'm seeing, and the exoskeleton suggests you evolved on a high-gravity world, probably with less atmosphere than Earth. Am I close?" Zixthal found himself answering before he could stop himself. "We come from Krathix Prime. Gravity is 1.8 times your Earth standard. We are apex predators, the most feared species in 7 star systems." "That's incredible," Sarah said with genuine enthusiasm. We'd love to learn more about your culture. This is humanity's first contact with an intelligent alien species. This is a historic moment. Marcus raised his hand like a student in a classroom. Quick question about your ship. What kind of power source does something that size require? We're running a fusion reactor on the Endeavor. But for something 50 times larger, I'm guessing you'd need either multiple fusion cores or maybe even antimatter. The Krathix warriors looked at each other. This was not going according to any protocol they had trained for. Kresh, the boarding party leader, tried to reassert control of the situation. He activated his sonic weapon, a device that emitted a sound specifically designed to trigger the fear centers of most species' brains. The high-pitched wail filled the cargo bay. The three humans winced and covered their ears. "Okay, that's really unpleasant," Rodriguez said loudly over the noise. "Could you turn that off, please? It's giving me a headache." Kresh, surprised that the humans were still standing, deactivated the weapon. Most species collapsed into fetal positions when exposed to that sound. These humans just looked annoyed. "Thank you," Rodriguez said. "Look, Commander Zixthal, I think we got off on the wrong foot here. Why don't we start over? We're peaceful researchers from Earth. We'd be happy to leave your space if that's what you want, or we could establish friendly diplomatic relations. Your choice." On his warship, Zixthal felt his confidence beginning to crack. In his entire career, spanning 3 decades, no species had ever been this casual about his intimidation displays. The humans were treating a potential conquest like a minor diplomatic inconvenience. He needed to learn more about these strange creatures before proceeding. The fear protocol was clearly not working as intended. Perhaps these humans had some technology that protected them from psychological warfare, or perhaps they were simply too primitive to understand the danger they were in. Zixthal made a decision. "We will study your species before determining your fate. My warriors will remain aboard your vessel. You will cooperate fully with our examination." Rodriguez shrugged. "Sure, we can do that. Fair warning, though. The ship only has 3 crew quarters, so your warriors might have to sleep in the cargo bay. Also, our food is probably not going to be compatible with your biology, so you might want to bring your own supplies." As the Krathix warriors settled into their unwanted role as guests rather than conquerors, Zixthal watched from his command center with growing unease. Something about these humans was deeply wrong. They should be afraid. Every instinct he had developed as a predator told him they should be terrified. But they were not. And that, more than anything else, was beginning to frighten him. Commander Zixthal spent a sleepless night cycle analyzing the situation. The humans had been aboard his target vessel for 6 hours now, and nothing was going according to plan. His warriors reported that the humans had offered them spare blankets, shown them where the bathroom facilities were located, and given them a basic tour of the ship. It was humiliating. He decided it was time to escalate. If simple intimidation displays were not working, then he would show these humans what real terror looked like. The next morning, ship time, Zixthal transported himself aboard the Endeavor along with his elite dreadguard. These were the most terrifying warriors in the Krathix military. They stood even taller than regular Krathix, their exoskeletons modified with razor-sharp blades and toxin dispensers. Their very presence had caused some species to die from heart failure induced by pure fear. The dreadguard materialized in the cargo bay in a flash of light and smoke. They arranged themselves in their most threatening formation, their weapons gleaming, their bioluminescent organs pulsing with colors that signaled extreme danger in the universal language of predator species. Captain Rodriguez looked up from the tablet he had been reading. "Oh, more visitors. Good morning, Commander. Would you like some breakfast? We're having scrambled eggs and toast. Well, the human version of scrambled eggs. They're made from chicken eggs. Chickens are these birds we domesticated about 8,000 years ago." Zixthal felt his confidence waver again. He pressed forward with his prepared speech. "Humans, you have been given time to consider your position. Now you will witness the true might of the Krathix Dominion. Behold your destruction." He activated the holographic projector he had brought with him. The cargo bay filled with images of Earth, but not the Earth as it existed now. This was Earth dying, cities burning, oceans boiling, the atmosphere stripped away. It was a simulation of what Krathix weapons could do to a planet, and it was completely realistic down to the smallest detail. Sarah watched the display with her head tilted. "Is that supposed to be Earth?" "You got the continents right, but the atmospheric composition in your simulation is off. Our atmosphere is about 78% nitrogen, not 82%. Also, water boils at 100 degrees Celsius at sea level, but your simulation has it boiling at 95 degrees. Just thought you should know for future accuracy. Zixthal stared at the small human female who had just critiqued his planet destruction simulation like it was a student's homework assignment. Marcus joined in. The orbital mechanics are pretty good though, Marcus said. And the energy calculations for atmospheric stripping look solid. What kind of weapon system would generate that much power? We've theorized about stellar-scale engineering, but we haven't built anything close to that yet. Yet? Zixthal found himself asking. Well, yeah, Marcus said with a shrug. We've only been in space for about 300 years. Give us another few centuries and we'll probably figure it out. Humans are pretty good at building things that blow up. Commander Zixthal felt a chill run down his spine despite his exoskeleton. The human had said it so casually as if the complete destruction of planets was just an engineering challenge to be solved eventually. He tried a different approach. He activated his sonic weapon, but this time at a different frequency. This one did not just cause discomfort. It triggered the amygdala, the fear center of the mammalian brain. It forced prey species to feel pure primal terror regardless of their rational thoughts. The sound filled the room. The three humans stopped what they were doing and stood very still for a moment. Then Sarah's face lit up with recognition. Oh, that's an amygdala hijack. You're using sonic resonance to trigger the fear response directly. That's brilliant. We have research into this kind of technology, but we mostly abandoned it because it was considered too inhumane for warfare. We use similar frequencies for crowd control in some places, but at much lower intensities. Zixthal turned off the weapon, his confidence now completely shattered. You have weapons that you consider too cruel to use in war? Well, yeah, Rodriguez said. We have lots of those. Chemical weapons, biological weapons, certain types of landmines. We banned most of them through international treaties. Using fear as a weapon seems cruel when you could just, negotiate instead. One of the Dreadguard, a warrior named Thex, spoke up in the Krathix language. Commander, request permission to access the human database. I want to understand what kind of species would ban effective weapons. Zixthal granted permission, glad that at least one of his warriors was taking initiative. Thex connected his portable terminal to the Endeavor's computer system. The humans had not even bothered to encrypt their historical database. They just let him in. What Thex found in the next 30 minutes would change everything. He started with human military history, thinking he would find records of primitive warfare. What he found instead was a catalog of horrors. Humans had fought wars continuously for their entire recorded history. They had developed weapons of such devastating power that they could destroy their own planet many times over. And yet they had somehow managed not to use the worst of these weapons. Thex read about something called World War I, trench warfare. Humans had sat in muddy holes for years, slowly dying from disease, drowning in mud, being torn apart by artillery shells, and they had just kept fighting. There was no mention of surrender when conditions became intolerable. They just endured. He read about World War II, cities flattened by conventional bombs, then 2 cities destroyed by atomic weapons that split atoms themselves to release devastating energy. Humans had built weapons that used the fundamental forces of the universe to kill other humans. He read about smaller conflicts. Humans fighting in jungles where disease killed more soldiers than combat. Humans fighting in deserts where the heat alone should have been fatal. Humans fighting in frozen mountains where the cold turned breath to ice. And then Thex made a mistake. He accessed the human entertainment database. The first video file he opened was labeled The Thing. It was something humans called a horror movie. Entertainment designed to scare them. Thex watched as humans on a research station in one of Earth's polar regions were hunted by an alien creature that could imitate any life form perfectly. The creature was nightmare fuel, a constantly shifting mass of flesh and teeth and tentacles. Thex watched in growing horror as the humans in the movie fought back against this creature with flamethrowers and explosives. They did not simply run and hide. They hunted it. They trapped it. They destroyed it. And this was considered entertainment. He opened another file, Alien. This one was about humans encountering a species that existed only to reproduce by implanting embryos in host bodies. The creature was perfect, a killing machine with acid for blood and a titanium-hard exoskeleton. And yet, A single human female survived and killed it by blowing it out an airlock into space. Thex opened file after file. Event Horizon. The Shining. Predator. Each one was a story designed to frighten humans, and in each one the humans faced their fears and fought back. They did not surrender. They did not give up. They endured. The young warrior stood up from the terminal, his legs shaking. He approached Commander Zixthal with his eyes showing what could only be described as existential dread. "Commander," Thex said quietly, "we need to leave. Now." "Explain," Zixthal demanded. "They create monsters for fun," Thex said. "They imagine creatures worse than anything that exists in nature, and then they tell stories about defeating them. For entertainment. They teach their children to face fear rather than flee from it. They have a concept called courage that they value above survival." Zixthal felt his certainty crumbling. "Show me." Thex brought up the human database on a larger screen. He showed the commander the wars, the weapons, the horror movies, the survival statistics from various disasters, humans who had survived for weeks without food, humans who had walked hundreds of miles through hostile terrain to reach safety, humans who had performed surgery on themselves when no help was available. "Look at this, Commander," Thex said, pulling up a medical file. "Human biochemistry. When they become afraid, their bodies produce a chemical called adrenaline." "Do you know what it does?" "Prepares them to flee?" Zixthal guessed. "No, sir. It makes them stronger, faster, more resistant to pain. Their fear response is not to hide or surrender. Their fear response is to fight harder. They call it the fight-or-flight response. And they have been selecting for the fight part for their entire evolutionary history." Commander Zixthal sat down heavily, his exoskeleton clicking against the metal floor. This could not be happening. The Krathiks had built their entire military doctrine on the assumption that all species feared death and would surrender rather than face it. But these humans seemed to view death as just another problem to solve, another obstacle to overcome. "There is more, Commander," Thex said quietly. "I found their evolutionary history. Humans are persistence predators. They evolved to chase prey across long distances until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. They did not need to be fast or strong. They just needed to never give up. And they never did." Zixthal looked at the three humans, who were now eating their breakfast and chatting casually while surrounded by the most elite warriors in the Krathiks military. They were not even paying attention, Doctor. Sarah Chen had noticed that the Krathiks warriors seemed uncomfortable. As a xenobiologist, she prided herself on understanding alien behavior, and these particular aliens were showing all the signs of stress. Their bioluminescent organs were pulsing irregularly, their antennae kept twitching, and several of them had positioned themselves near the exits. She decided to try being helpful. After all, this was first contact. Humans should make a good impression. "Commander Zixthal," she said brightly, "I noticed your warriors seem a bit on edge. Would it help if I explained more about human culture? Maybe that would make everyone more comfortable." Zixthal wanted to say no. Every instinct screamed at him to refuse. But his training as a military commander included intelligence gathering, and he needed to understand these humans better. He nodded slowly. Sarah pulled out her tablet and connected it to the cargo bay's display screen. "Great. So I thought I'd show you some things about human psychology and culture. Since you seem interested in fear responses, I'll focus on that. We actually have a really interesting relationship with fear." She pulled up her first presentation slide. It showed an image of something called a haunted house. Zixthal studied the image. It appeared to be a human dwelling decorated with skeletons, artificial spiderwebs, and various creatures that humans had designed to look frightening. "This is a haunted house," Sarah explained cheerfully. "We build these for entertainment. Humans pay money to walk through them and get scared. It's fun, Thex whispered in disbelief. "Oh yes," Sarah continued. "We have an entire holiday called Halloween where we dress up as monsters and scary things. Children go door to door collecting candy while wearing costumes of ghosts, vampires, zombies, and other creatures we invented to frighten ourselves." She clicked to the next slide. This one showed humans riding a roller coaster. Their faces twisted in expressions that looked like terror, but they were also smiling. These are roller coasters. They're machines designed to simulate danger. They drop you from great heights, spin you upside down, and move at high speeds. They're completely safe, but they trigger our fear responses. And we love them. Some humans travel across the planet just to ride the most extreme roller coasters. Kresh, the warrior who had first boarded the Endeavor, spoke up. Why would you seek out fear if you do not have to? Sarah thought about this for a moment. I guess it's because fear makes us feel alive. Also, we like testing ourselves. Overcoming fear feels good. It makes us confident. There's actually a brain chemical called dopamine that gets released when we do scary things safely. It's pleasurable. She clicked through several more slides showing humans engaging in what she called extreme sports. Skydiving. Rock climbing without ropes. Something called parkour, where humans jumped between buildings. Cave diving in underwater tunnels. Base jumping off cliffs. We do all of this voluntarily, Sarah said, for fun and challenge. Nobody forces us. We just like pushing our limits. Commander Zixthal felt something cold settling in his stomach. These humans deliberately sought out situations that triggered their fear responses. They had turned fear into a recreational activity. What kind of species did that? Sarah moved on to her next section. Now let's talk about human children's entertainment. This is really interesting from a psychological perspective. She showed images of children's books. These are fairy tales we tell to young humans. In this one, a child gets lost in the forest and almost gets eaten by a witch. In this one, a girl is hunted by an evil queen who wants to cut out her heart. In this one, children are lured into a house made of candy by a witch who plans to eat them. You tell these stories to your children? Zixthal asked in horror. Well, yes, Sarah said. Child psychologists believe it helps them learn to cope with fear in a safe environment. We start teaching humans to face scary things when they're very young. It's part of healthy development. Marcus wandered over, interested in the conversation. Oh, are you talking about scary movies? I love horror films. Did you show them The Thing yet? Not yet, Sarah said. But that's a good example. She pulled up the movie trailer. The Krathix warriors who had not yet seen. It watched in growing distress as the shape-shifting monster consumed and imitated humans in increasingly gruesome ways. This is considered a classic, Marcus said enthusiastically. The practical effects were amazing for the time period. The thing about horror movies is they let us experience danger without actual risk. Plus, the problem-solving aspect is interesting. How would you survive in that situation? What clues would tell you who's infected? It's like a puzzle wrapped in terror. A puzzle wrapped in terror, Zixthal repeated slowly. The human had just described nightmare fuel as an intellectual exercise. Captain Rodriguez joined them, carrying a fresh cup of coffee. Are we doing cultural exchange? Excellent, Commander. I'd be happy to share some of my experiences if you're interested. I served in the Mars Rebellion before becoming a research captain. Mars Rebellion? Zixthal asked, not sure he wanted to know but unable to stop himself from asking. Oh yeah, Rodriguez said. Back in 2289, the Mars colonies wanted independence from Earth. Turned into a 3-year conflict. Nasty business. Fighting in low gravity. Dealing with life support failures, combat in vacuum. Lost a lot of good people. He said it so casually, as if describing a sporting event rather than what sounded like a horrific war. You fought in a vacuum? Kresh asked. Without atmosphere? Had to sometimes, Rodriguez confirmed. When your habitat gets breached, you don't have much choice. We trained for it. You've got about 15 seconds of useful consciousness in hard vacuum before you pass out. Maybe 90 seconds before permanent brain damage. But that's enough time to get to an airlock or patch a suit breach if you're quick and don't panic. 15 seconds of consciousness without air, Thex whispered. And you just trained to work within that limit? Sure, Rodriguez said. Humans are pretty adaptable. We've got this saying, you're not dead until you're warm and dead. Means that we've had people survive things that should have killed them. Extreme cold sometimes puts the body in a state where it needs less oxygen. We've had drowning victims revived after over an hour underwater in freezing water. Human biology is weird. He took a sip of his coffee. The thing about humans is we're really hard to kill and we don't give up easily. During the Mars Rebellion, there was this one siege where we were cut off from supplies for 43 days. We survived on recycled water and emergency rations meant for 2 weeks. Lost 30% body weight. Everyone was in bad shape. But we didn't surrender. Why not? Zixthal asked. If you were starving, why continue fighting? Rodriguez looked surprised by the question. Because we still had a chance. As long as you're alive, you've got a chance. Plus there's pride. We don't like giving up. It goes against our nature. We're persistence predators. We evolved to keep going long after our prey collapsed from exhaustion. Giving up just isn't in our psychological makeup. Sarah jumped back in, excited. Oh, that's a great point. Let me show you human persistence hunting. She pulled up a video of human hunters in Africa tracking an antelope across the savannah under the hot sun. The antelope was faster, but the humans just kept walking. Hour after hour. The antelope would run, rest, run again. The humans just walked. Eventually, after something like 8 hours, the antelope collapsed from heat exhaustion, and the humans walked up to it. That's how we hunted for most of our evolution, Sarah explained. We're not the fastest, not the strongest, not the best climbers, but we can keep going longer than almost anything else. We sweat to cool down, which lets us operate in heat that would kill most predators. We can carry water and food. We can plan and communicate, and we just don't stop. She pulled up another video. This is the human activity called a marathon. Humans run for over 42 kilometers without stopping. For fun. Some humans do ultramarathons that are even longer. The record for continuous running is something like 350 kilometers over 3 days. Marcus nodded. Yeah, endurance is kind of humanity's superpower. We're not impressive in short bursts, but over time, we outlast everything. There's this concept called spite that plays into it too. Sometimes humans keep going just to prove they can, even when it's not logical. Spite? Zixthal asked. Sure, Marcus said. Like, I know this is painful and difficult, but I'm going to do it anyway because you said I couldn't. Humans can be really stubborn. We'll endure tremendous hardship just to prove a point. It's not always smart, but it's definitely human. Rodriguez laughed. That's true. I remember one guy in basic training. The instructor said he'd never make it through the obstacle course. That guy ran the course 5 times in a row just to prove the instructor wrong. Threw up twice, pulled a muscle, finished anyway. Pure spite. The 3 humans laughed together at the memory, as if self-destructive stubbornness was amusing rather than concerning. Zixthal looked at his warriors. They all had the same expression of dawning horror. They had been trying to scare creatures that actively sought out fear, that told horror stories to their children. Commander Zixthal retreated to a quiet corner of the Endeavor's cargo bay to consult with his science officer, Vexith, over a secure communication channel. He needed to understand exactly what they were dealing with before he made his next move. Vexith, I'm sending you all the data we have collected on humans so far. I need a complete biological and psychological analysis, priority maximum. On the Krathix warship, Vexith received the data files and began analyzing them. What she found in the next hour would fundamentally change how the Krathix viewed these strange aliens. She started with human biology. The basics seemed normal enough. Carbon-based life, oxygen breathers, water as a solvent. But as she dug deeper, the oddities began to appear. Humans had something called an adrenal gland that produced several powerful hormones. When humans experience fear or stress, these glands released a chemical called adrenaline into their bloodstream. Vexith studied the effects of this chemical with growing disbelief. Adrenaline increased heart rate, delivering more oxygen to muscles. It dilated airways, improving breathing. It caused the liver to release glucose for quick energy. It reduced pain perception. It enhanced memory formation and focus. Most incredibly, it increased physical strength by allowing muscles to contract more forcefully. Humans got stronger when they were afraid. Their fear response literally enhanced their combat capabilities. Vexith cross-referenced this with the Krathix fear response. When a Krathix became frightened, their bodies prepared for flight. Blood moved away from their extremities to protect their core. Their strength decreased to conserve energy for running. Their cognitive functions simplified to basic escape behaviors. Humans and Krathix had exactly opposite reactions to fear. The Krathix evolved to run from danger. Humans evolved to fight it, but there was more. Vexith found references to something called hysterical strength or superhuman strength. Under extreme stress, humans could perform feats far beyond their normal capabilities. There were documented cases of human females lifting vehicles off trapped children, of injured humans carrying multiple people to safety, of humans bending metal bars with their bare hands when trapped. The mechanism was simple. Normally, human brains limited muscle contraction to prevent injury, but under extreme circumstances, these limiters could be overridden. Humans could tear their own muscles, break their own bones, and damage their own joints if they pushed hard enough. And in life-threatening situations, they sometimes did exactly that. Vexith moved on to human evolution. She had to read the files 3 times because they seemed impossible. Humans were pursuit predators. They had evolved to chase prey across long distances in the hot African sun. Their bodies were optimized for endurance rather than speed or strength. They had nearly hairless skin covered in sweat glands that allowed them to cool down through evaporation. They could carry water and food. They had springy tendons in their legs that returned energy with each step. But the most remarkable adaptation was mental. Humans could suppress their body's distress signals. When a prey animal became exhausted, it stopped running because its body forced it to stop. When a human became exhausted, they could choose to keep going anyway. Their brains could override their body's survival instincts through sheer willpower. There were stories in the human database of humans running until their hearts failed, walking until their legs broke, continuing to fight with fatal wounds. It was not that humans did not feel pain or exhaustion. They felt it but chose to ignore it. Vexith sent a priority message to Commander Zixthal. Commander, humans are persistence predators with voluntary control over their pain response and the ability to override survival instincts through willpower. Their fear response enhances combat capability, rather than preparing them for flight. They are, biologically speaking, the worst possible species to attempt intimidation on. While this analysis was happening, an incident occurred on the Endeavour that would make everything worse. Dr. Sarah Chen had been conducting her research in the ship's small biology lab. She was studying samples collected from the nebula, looking for signs of extremophile organisms. One of her sample containers had been left near a heating element and had cracked, allowing several specimens to escape into the lab. Among these specimens was something Sarah had collected from a piece of debris earlier in the mission. It was an Earth organism that had somehow survived in space, probably hitching a ride on some earlier human vessel. It was small, brown, and had 8 legs. It was a common house spider. The spider, disturbed by its sudden change in environment, scuttled out of the biology lab and into the main corridor. It happened to cross the path of Kresh, the Krathix warrior who had led the initial boarding party. Kresh saw the 8-legged creature moving rapidly across the floor toward him. His evolution on Krathix Prime, where fast-moving small creatures were often venomous, triggered an immediate panic response. He jumped backward, colliding with 2 other warriors, and let out a high-pitched alarm call that brought every Krathix on the ship to full alert. Contact. Hostile organism. Pattern suggests ambush predator, Kresh shouted in his native language. 3 more Krathix warriors spotted the spider and scrambled away from it. The small creature, confused by all the noise and movement, did what spiders do when threatened. It moved quickly, trying to find a dark place to hide. To the Krathix, it looked like an attack run. Alarms blared throughout the Endeavour as the Krathix warriors activated their threat response protocols. Weapons were drawn. Defensive positions were taken. The spider scuttled under a storage container, seeking shelter from all the chaos. Sarah heard the commotion and ran out of her lab. What's wrong? What happened? Hostile organism, Kresh said, pointing at the storage container. Small, fast-moving, 8-legged. Exhibiting predatory behavior patterns. Extremely dangerous, Sarah blinked. She looked where he was pointing. She got down on her hands and knees and peered under the container. Then she started laughing. Oh my God, you guys are scared of a spider? It's harmless. Well, this species is harmless. Some spiders are venomous, but this is just a common house spider. They eat flies and mosquitoes. They're actually helpful. She reached under the container without hesitation and cupped the spider in her hands. The Krathix warriors all took several steps back. Sarah stood up, holding the tiny creature carefully. See? Completely harmless. Poor thing is probably terrified with all this noise. Let me just put it back in the lab where it belongs. She walked past a group of elite Krathix warriors carrying an 8-legged predator in her bare hands, completely unconcerned. The warriors pressed themselves against the walls to give her as much space as possible. Marcus poked his head out of the engine room. What's all the noise about? The guys found a spider, Sarah called back. False alarm. Okay. Let me know if it's a dangerous species. Otherwise, just put it outside or something. She disappeared into her lab and the door closed behind her. The Krathix warriors looked at each other in shared humiliation and horror. She picked it up, Thek said quietly. She just reached under there and picked up an unknown predator with her bare hands. She called it harmless, Kresh added. But it clearly has the morphology of a venomous species. 8 legs suggest redundancy for hunting. Fast movement indicates pursuit predator behavior, and she just grabbed it. Commander Zixthal, who had witnessed the entire incident through his warrior's body cameras, sat down heavily on his command throne. He pulled up the human database entry on spiders. Spiders were indeed predators. They were venomous. They were highly successful as a species, with over 40,000 different varieties on Earth. Some species could kill humans with their venom, and humans just lived alongside them. They were so common in human dwellings that humans had a phrase for it: house spider. Humans shared their living spaces with venomous predators and considered it normal. He kept reading. Spiders were not even close to the most dangerous creatures on Earth. There were snakes that could kill with a single bite. There were insects that carried deadly diseases. There were fish with venom so painful that humans begged for death. There were mammals large enough to easily kill humans. There were reptiles that had remained virtually unchanged since the time of dinosaurs because they were already perfect predators, and humans had not just survived on this death world. They had thrived. They had conquered it. They had become the dominant species on a planet that seemed designed to kill them. Vexith's voice came through his communicator. "Commander, I have completed my analysis. I strongly recommend we abandon this operation immediately." "Explain," Zixthal said, though he suspected he already knew what she would say. "Humans have a concept they call spite," Vexith said. "It means they will sometimes endure suffering specifically to prove they cannot be broken. They have another concept called stubbornness, where they refuse to change course even when it becomes disadvantageous to continue. They value these traits. They teach them to their children." She paused. "Commander, if we continue trying to intimidate them, they might choose to fight us just to prove they cannot be scared. And their biology suggests they would be extremely difficult to defeat in combat. Their pain tolerance is exceptional. Their endurance is unmatched by any species we have encountered. Their fear response makes them more dangerous rather than less. I have our Commander Zixthal called an emergency meeting with his senior officers in a secure room aboard his warship. The humans had graciously allowed them to use one of the Endeavor's docking shuttles for privacy, which somehow made the situation even more humiliating. They were huddling in a borrowed space because they were afraid to discuss their situation in front of their supposed captives. The 5 officers gathered in the cramped shuttle. Kresh, Thex, Vexith, and 2 ship commanders named Zalthar and Pixin. All of them looked shaken in ways that combat had never managed to achieve. "We need to vote on our next course of action," Zixthal said without preamble. Option 1. We continue the fear protocol and attempt to break human resistance through escalating intimidation. Option 2. We retreat and report this species as unsuitable for conquest. Option 3. We attempt to negotiate a peaceful resolution. "If I may speak," Vexith said, "I have completed a full analysis of human capability, and I believe option 1 would be catastrophic. Every escalation we have attempted has only made the humans more interested in us, not more afraid. They are treating this as a learning experience." Zalthar, who commanded one of the escort frigates, nodded agreement. "My crew has been monitoring human communications. They are not sending distress signals. They have not attempted to escape." Captain Rodriguez filed his daily log report this morning, and he described our presence as an interesting first contact scenario, and mostly positive so far. "He is not treating us as a threat. That is the problem," Zixthal said. "We are not a threat to them. Not psychologically. Everything we have learned suggests that threatening humans only engages their stubbornness and combative instincts." Thex spoke up, his voice still shaken from the spider incident. "Commander, I have been reviewing human military doctrine. They have a saying, 'No plan survives contact with the enemy.' They expect things to go wrong. They train for chaos and unpredictability. Our intimidation tactics are designed to create stress and fear, but humans consider stress and fear to be normal parts of existence." "Show them," Vexith said. Thex pulled up a holographic display. "This is human military training. They deliberately create stressful, frightening situations to prepare their soldiers. They practice being cold, wet, tired, hungry, and under simulated fire simultaneously. They call it stress inoculation training. They are literally teaching themselves to operate. Normally, while experiencing all the conditions, we used to break enemy morale. The display showed human soldiers crawling through mud under barbed wire while explosions went off around them. Another clip showed humans being subjected to tear gas to train them to function through pain and panic. Another showed underwater escape training where humans had to hold their breath while solving problems in a flooded compartment. They train for the worst-case scenarios, Thex continued. And then when those scenarios happen in reality, they are psychologically prepared. We have been trying to create worst-case scenarios to frighten them, but they have already imagined worse and trained for it. Pixin, the other ship commander, had been quietly reviewing data on his personal tablet. Commander, I have found something else troubling. Human reaction to threat scales with the level of threat. The greater the danger, the harder they fight. There are multiple documented cases of humans performing impossible feats when sufficiently threatened. He pulled up several historical records. This human female, a mother, lifted a vehicle weighing over 2,000 kilograms to free her trapped child. This human male continued fighting after being shot multiple times, taking down 3 armed opponents before collapsing. This human soldier held a defensive position alone against 50 enemies for over 6 hours while wounded. Every time we escalate, we risk triggering this response. Zixthal felt his resolve crumbling. So you are all recommending retreat? No, sir, Vexith said carefully. I am recommending we reclassify this mission. We encountered humans believing they were a typical spacefaring species. We now know they are apex predators from a death world with psychological profiles completely incompatible with fear protocol tactics. This is not a failure. This is a discovery. A discovery that we are cowards who flee from a ship with 3 crew members, Kresh said bitterly. No, Vexith countered. A discovery that some species cannot be conquered through intimidation and should be approached differently. The Krathix Dominion has expanded through careful selection of targets. We choose species that are vulnerable to psychological warfare. We have never claimed to be capable of defeating every possible enemy. That would be arrogant and foolish, Zixthal considered this. It was a face-saving way to frame the situation. The Krathix had not failed. They had simply encountered a species outside their tactical parameters. What do you propose? He asked Vexith. We offer a formal alliance, she said. We tell the humans that we were testing their suitability as allies by evaluating their fear response under stress. We explain that the Krathix value courage and resilience. We say they have passed our test and we wish to establish diplomatic relations. It was clever. It reframed the entire situation from attempted conquest to an evaluation process. The humans might even believe it, given their apparent lack of understanding about how terrifying they were. And if they refuse? Zelthar asked. Then we retreat and mark their space as protected, Vexith said. We spread the word to other species that humans are dangerous and should not be provoked. We treat them as we would treat any other apex predator, with caution and respect. Zixthal looked around at his officers. They all looked relieved at this proposal. Even Kresh, who had been the most aggressive about maintaining Krathix dominance, was nodding agreement. Very well, Zixthal said. We will attempt diplomatic contact under the alliance framework. Kresh, you will accompany me. We will formally approach Captain Rodriguez with our proposal. They returned to the Endeavor to find the 3 humans in the common area, eating lunch. The smell of cooked food filled the air, and for a moment Zixthal was distracted by how casual the scene was. These humans were eating a meal while surrounded by alien warriors who had boarded their ship by force. They had not even bothered to lock the door to their living quarters. Captain Rodriguez looked up from his sandwich. Commander, good timing. We were just about to call you. We wanted to discuss the situation. As do we, Captain, Zixthal said, trying to project confidence he did not feel. The Krathix Dominion wishes to make a formal proposal. Great, Rodriguez said. But first, can I ask you something? You've been pretty intense since you arrived, and we're trying to figure out why. Sarah thinks you were trying to scare us as some kind of dominance display. Marcus thinks maybe your culture views intimidation as a greeting ritual. I think there might have been a miscommunication about territory rights. Which is it? Zixthal felt trapped. The human had just listed 3 possible explanations, one of which was exactly correct, and was calmly waiting for an answer as if they were discussing the weather. He decided honesty was the best approach. Humans seem to value directness. Dr. Chen's assessment is correct, Zixthal said. The Krathix Dominion uses psychological warfare as our primary conquest strategy. We create fear in our enemies, causing them to surrender without significant combat. We believed you would react as other species have reacted. Oh, Sarah said, looking genuinely surprised. You were trying to conquer us. That was the initial objective, yes. Huh, Marcus said. I did not see that coming. So all the scary displays and the holographic planet destruction and the scary sounds were supposed to make us surrender? Yes, Zixthal confirmed. There was a long moment of silence. Then all three humans started laughing. They were not laughing at the Krathiks with mockery or anger. They were laughing with genuine amusement, as if they had just been told a funny joke. "Oh man," Rodriguez said, wiping his eyes. "No wonder you guys have seemed so confused. Commander, I'm sorry, but humans don't really work that way. We're persistence predators. We evolved to deal with fear and keep going anyway. You can't scare us into surrendering because our entire evolutionary history is about not giving up when things get scary. We have come to understand this," Zixthal said with as much dignity as he could manage, "which is why we wish to propose an alternative arrangement. The Krathik's Dominion would like to offer humanity a formal alliance." Rodriguez's expression became more serious. "An alliance? What would that involve? Trade agreements, mutual defense pacts, cultural exchange, shared scientific research," Zixthal listed. "The Krathik's Dominion controls 47 star systems. We have resources, technology, and established trade routes. An alliance with humanity would be mutually beneficial." "Why would you want to ally with us?" Sarah asked. "You just tried to conquer us." "Because," Vexith said, speaking up for the first time, "any species that can remain calm and curious in the face of our most advanced intimidation techniques is a species we want as an